Judge William Valpy. The wealthy English judge who was the odd man out in pioneer Dunedin.
William Henry Valpy has to be one of the most unusual characters to emigrate to pioneer Dunedin. He was English for a start, but more than that, he came from a well-connected family that was much a part of the British Anglican establishment as you could imagine. In origin, a Norman Italian family, the Valpys hailed from Jersey and the Channel Islands, and their lineage is laid out in detail in Burke's Peerage. William, however, was born here in the heart of Reading in Berkshire, where his father was the nationally renowned headmaster of its 900-year-old boys' school for almost 50 years. This is St Lawrence Church just behind the school where William was baptised in 1793. It now contains a statue of his famous father.
After completing his own schooling at Eton and then a short stint in the Royal Navy, William Valpy joined the East India Company in 1810 and became a civil servant in its Bengal division. Over more than 30 years in Bengal, William married Caroline Jeffreys, whose brother was another Indian civil service officer, had 5 children, and rose to become a judge. The challenging climate, however, wrought havoc with his health. And in 1838, he retired to England. The Valpys set themselves up in fashionable Bath, in what was then a brand new villa in a stylish new development. No doubt Judge Valpy also took advantage of Bath's famous therapeutic waters.
By 1841, however, they'd moved on to Cheltenham, where they built this elegant villa, which the judge named Vallombrosa House, after a spot near Florence in Tuscany that was popular with 19th century English travellers. Valpy's health didn't improve, however, and his doctor advised him to seek a better climate in the colonies. And so it was that in late 1848, the ailing 55-year-old judge made the, to me, somewhat mind-boggling decision to leave his comfortable existence here in the leafy home counties of England and emigrate to far-off Otago. He set sail from London on the Ajax in early 1849, accompanied by his wife Caroline and 4 of their 5 children, as well as a full retinue of servants. Members of their extended family circle, the Jeffreys and the Fultons, likewise with Indian connections, also joined them on this strange expedition to the new Scottish Presbyterian colony in Otago. What an unusual addition to the tiny population of pioneer Dunedin this large group of well-heeled English Anglicans must have been in mid-1849. I mean, Valpy was supposed to be the wealthiest man in New Zealand on his arrival, and it must have been a huge coup for the embryonic Otago settlement that he chose to come here.
He also brought with him such useful colonial accessories as a sawmill, a flour mill, and a large supply of money, all of which were vitally needed in the struggling settlement.
Judge Valpy was the first settler to take up land on the swampy meadowlands that ran eastwards from Dunedin to the ocean beach. He acquired large areas of land on the South Dunedin Flat and also on the hills above what would later be called St Clair. Now, he named these properties Caversham and Forbury after places that were connected with his family back in Reading, England, and they endure, of course, to the present as the names of suburbs in modern Dunedin.
Valpy obviously stood out as an Englishman and an Anglican in Dunedin, founded as a Scottish Presbyterian settlement. But to begin with, he was very popular. His farms were an important source of employment for many early settlers. The Scottish labourers that had been recruited by the Otago Association needed employers like him to give them work and let them save the money they needed to eventually buy their own land.
He paid well, and he looked after his workers too, putting on annual feasts at the end of every harvest time. He also paid for the construction of the very first road out to the beach at Sinclair as a branch line off the main road to the south, which led to his property and then on to the beach. And that privately funded road endures to the present as Forbury Road.
The old judge was, however, a man of his class, a patrician who saw himself as naturally fitted to lead and was no great believer in democratic rule. When the colonial governor George Grey appointed him to a seat on the Legislative Council in Wellington, overlooking the leaders of the Otago settlement, Valpy came in for sustained attack.
Captain Cargill was incensed that a Scottish settlement should be represented by an Englishman, and he mounted a bitter attack on the judge through the newspaper. Greatly shocked by the abuse directed at him, and with no respite from the ill health which had brought him to Otago in the first place, Valpy died in September 1852 without ever taking up his seat on the council in Wellington.
It was a sad end for a man who brought much to pioneer Dunedin.